Well, hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to my workshop. Now, just come back from a break in Thailand, and well, I made a little video over there. What, you haven't seen it? Gosh, I don't know. I'll tell you what, I'll put a link just up there and one in the description if you fancy popping along and having a look. Anyway, I come back to really exciting news, and that is that I have been invited to join Daniel from Devil & Sons and Scott from Bonehead Guitars on the Guitar Builders Collective podcast. Wow, seriously? They want you on the show? Yes. Don't they know that you just wing it? Shush, don't tell everybody. And hey, you haven't even got a beard. Well, I suppose I could grow one. Well, I'm sorry about that interruption. Now then, the podcast is on the 7th of March at 1 p.m. GMT. I don't know what time it is in your part of the world, but I do hope you'll join us for a chat about guitar making. And well, I just hope they don't ask me too many difficult questions because he's right. I do wing it, as you know. Anyway, back to this bass guitar build. Now, it's been a little while since I worked on this guitar, so let's have a quick recap of what I've done up to now. Now, this guitar is being built in support of the Jürgen Zoller Challenge Cup. Now, this is an annual competition or a challenge that has been put together by the members of the Guitar Builders Collective and friends of Jürgen Zoller in memory of the great guitar builder himself, who sadly passed away last year. And it's also in support of the charity that his family are supporting, and all the details of the charity are down in the description below. Using a design inspired by the work of Scott at Bonehead Guitars, I've created a hollow body bass guitar using mahogany and ash to give a contrast of colours in the wood. I've created a laminate neck using ash with some strips of veneer, sort of a grey, silvery grey veneer, and the mahogany. I fitted a fretboard which is made of Brazilian rosewood. The dots on the fretboard are inspired by a Jürgen Zoller guitar. He used metal rods. What I've done is created wooden tubes made of ash and filled those with a mahogany centre and put a strip of veneer through the middle. I fitted the neck to the body using the single bolt technique that I like to use, and this also includes a small keel which keeps the neck rigid. Well, okay, so that's where I'm at, and to be honest with you, the next job really is for me to do a little bit more shaping and sanding on this neck. But I mean, that's like watching paint dry, let's be honest, watching somebody sand. So what I'd like to do today is to give you my approach to fretting a fretboard, and really want to aim this very much at the beginners, because when I started building guitars, doing the frets was one of the things that really, worried me. It looked so complicated, and when you looked online and watched people do it, they had all these fancy tools and things, and I thought, oh crikey, am I going to be able to do it? But in actual fact, having done quite a few of these now, it's not a difficult process, and it doesn't need expensive tools. So what I want to do today is take you through my process, show you the tools that I've made to help me do this, and hopefully give you a little bit of confidence to try and do fretting yourself. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is the straight edge, because fundamentally you need your fretboard flat, or you need to be able to check that it is flat. Now then, I'll be honest with you, I invested in one of these, it's a Veritas laser created straight edge, and it's extremely accurate and it is absolutely fantastic. But if you haven't got one of those, a new ruler will probably do the job. Now, these aren't absolutely straight, unfortunately, but they're probably straight enough to get you a really good basis for doing the fretting. Particularly if you've got a brand new ruler, it's certainly worth getting one of those. So that's your starting point. Make sure that your fretboard is flat to start off with. Always helps. Now then, when you put the frets in, there's a very good chance that this is going to bend the neck. It doesn't always happen, but when you bang the frets in, the tang going into the slot is going to push the wood apart, and there is a chance that over the course of the whole length of the fretboard that it's going to introduce a little bit of back bow. And before you level the frets, you need to know whether there is back bow or not, so you can make an adjustment with a truss rod. And this is where my first homemade tool comes in. So having leveled the neck, so I know that this is now level, I use this little tool here, and it's basically a piece of hardwood with 3 bolts screwed in. And what I've done, I've polished the ends of these bolts so that there's no sharp bits to ruin my fretboard, and I basically lay this on and use it as a rocker. Now I've adjusted this so there shouldn't be any noise when I tap any part. He says there's a little noise in the middle there, which indicates that that middle one needs to be adjusted very slightly. So let's do that. Get the screwdriver. So I'm just going to just give it a very slight turn. I used bolts in the wood because they've obviously got a finer thread. Actually that looks all right now. So now I can put this to one side, and once I've finished doing the fretting, I can then come back to this and it will tell me if there is any back bow. Now there is another way of doing this, the way the professionals do it, and that's with one of these slotted rulers. Now the problem with that is A, they're quite expensive, and B, you need a slotted ruler for every scale length that you're going to work on. Now I'm afraid my budget didn't go, or doesn't go, to buying loads of slotted rulers. Now I've had friends that have made slotted rulers out of just grinding slots in a standard ruler, and that's one way of doing it. It's a perfectly valid way of doing that, but obviously, as I said, not all rulers are absolutely flat, so that might cause problems. And this little tool here does the job for me, because all I need to do is, once I've got the frets in, I need to just put this on there and just check. If it's not flat, I can make an adjustment with the truss rod, and then I know it's okay. So I'm going to put this to one side now, because I'll be using that once I've put the frets in. Okay, right, I'm going to move the neck out of the way just for a minute, because now I need to look at the fret wire. So let's talk about fret wire. Now, one thing that I've done from very early on is buy my fret wire in bulk lengths. So I buy it in 5 metre lengths, and you can get it reasonably cheaply. I don't go for the top quality fret wire, I have to be honest, with my guitars, and I haven't had any trouble over the last 15 years that I've been making guitars. It's always been pretty good. Now, the things you need to know about fret wire. Well, firstly, don't be daunted when you look at the huge range of options you've got for fret wire. It was a bit daunting for me at the outset, and what I actually did was I went and got one of my guitars that I'd bought and measured what the thickness of the fret wire was, or the width of the fret wire was, and then I went and ordered that, and that was quite thick, and to be honest with you, I've stuck with that pretty much all the way through my guitar building career, and that is about 2.5 to 2.9 mil wide. Now then, there are a lot of options for fret wire. When I came to do the acoustic guitars earlier in the year, the thick fret wire just didn't seem to suit them, so I bought some thinner, which is, I think, is about 1.9 mil wide. I don't really worry too much about all the other measurements. If you look on the sort of cards that come with these fret wires, you'll see that there's a measurement for the width, the height, and the tag width. Now, as far as the tag width goes, I've got a fret cutting saw, so I assume that the tags will be fine with that. And up to this point, they have. So I haven't worried about that. In terms of the height of the fret, the difference between them is so small that I don't think I would really notice them. And so I've never really worried about the height of the fret, if I'm honest with you. So I just go for the width, and it's more, for me, how it looks on the guitar, because electric guitar looks quite nice with quite thick fret wire, whereas an acoustic looks much better with a thinner fret wire. You know, the professionals will, I'm sure, tell you that you need a specific type of fret wire for a specific type of guitar or playing style. I found that as a, you know, fairly novice guitar player, pretty much all the fret wires will do the job. Why do I buy it in bulk? Very simply, because it's already got the radius in, and I don't have to worry about putting it through a tool to introduce a radius, because it's got a radius which is much tighter than the actual fretboard is going to be. And so when I bang the frets in, the fret wire, as in my experience, sits really nicely in the slots. I always end up with some offcuts of fret wire, which I keep in a plastic bag. These are not long enough to actually do a whole guitar, but if I've got a fret that's gone a bit wonky over the years or needs to be replaced, then yeah, I can go to my little stock of offcuts and get what I need. So we've got the fret wire. We need to cut it now. Enter stage left. A couple of homemade tools. The first one is a block of wood with a load of holes cut in it, so that I can put the cut frets into these slots. I've got somewhere to keep them out of the way, away from the guitar and guitar neck, so I don't scratch anything. But I need something to cut them with, and to do that I have this modified pair of pincers. So this was just a standard pair of pincers that I bought. I ground the end down. I actually did it on an oil stone. It took quite a while to do it by hand, but I just ground it down, and that's great because it created a nice sharp edge there to cut the wire. But I needed quite a bit of pressure to squeeze it together to cut it, so I added 2 wooden blocks to the end of the handles. It's just simply a question of making a wooden block, drilling a hole, sticking the end in. I think I actually cut the end of the pliers off, probably with an angle grinder, stuck them in there with a bit of super glue, and now I've got this great tool. It's really easy to use, and yeah, it just cost me the price of basically a cheap pair of pliers. Okay, so now it's just a question of cutting the fret wire to the lengths that you need. Now what I tend to do is use a bit of an offcut just to get a rough idea of the size of the frets that I need to cut. As you go down, obviously they get wider, so we'll start at the top there. I always leave quite a nice little piece on each side so that I've got plenty of fret to play with, and well, then it's just a question of going in and nipping the ends and catching them as they jump off. So I shall just go through and do these, and then I shall get back to you when I've done it. I have a nice row of cut frets. I'm not putting these cutters away because I shall need those in a little bit, and I've not put the fret wire away because I can guarantee that some of these will get messed up as I put them in, and I will have to cut another piece. Now then, I should mention that these are nickel silver frets. They're not stainless steel. Stainless steel is very hard. It looks really nice, it lasts for ages, but my goodness me, you'll have a job cutting it. So my advice, if you're a beginner, stick to the nickel silver ones, and yeah, you should be fine. Right, now then, before we go any further, I need to clean out these slots, because during the course of this build, I've been sanding this fretboard, and there's a load of crud gone into them. I've also got situations just here, for example, where I've put a cocktail stick in, and I need to make the slot over the top of the cocktail stick. So to do that, I have another homemade tool, and here it is. Yeah, not the best looking tool, but to be honest with you, sometimes you just need something that will do the job for you. Now this is a little hacksaw blade, one of those junior hacksaw blades, which I snipped off with a pair of tin cutters and stuck into a slot on a piece of wood. And it's just got a nice little edge on the end there, which just enables me to go into the fret slots here, and you've got to be very careful when you're doing this, so just take your time and just drag it slowly back, and this will just clear out any dust or glue or whatever you've got stuck in that slot. And I find it's best to work from one side of the fretboard first and then turn the fretboard round and then do the other, because it's easier to pull this towards you than try and push it away. So I'm just going to get on and yeah, clean out these frets, and I shall be back with you in a bit. Right, well, I've just hit a little bit of a problem while cleaning out the fret slots, and I thought I'd show you how I'm going to tackle it. What's happened here is I've got some glue in the fret slot, and I've tried to clean it out with my little tool here, but it's too hard, and unfortunately I've gone and scratched a little bit. Now I'm hoping that the fret is going to cover it up, but look, things like this are going to happen when you're doing your guitar, and you know, you're going to have little marks and bumps and stuff on it. If you're building it for yourself, quite honestly, it's one of those things. It's a quirk of the work. Obviously, you need to take as much care as you can, but things do happen. Now then, what I'm going to do now is just use a sharp knife to try and just create a slot which I can go into with the tool, because at the moment the tool's just bouncing off the top. So it's just a question of very gently going over there, and obviously with a shaky hand it's not so easy. But with all these sorts of things, it's just about taking your time. Fretwork does take a while to do. The best thing you can do is stick on a nice soothing track and just work to it, quite honestly, or stick on your favourite piece of rock music and do it, but just don't rush it. So now this is starting to clear now, so hopefully that's going to be all right. As I say, just take your time. It's so easy to slip, as I'm doing. Let's see if we can get a better line. It's also a good idea to make sure that when you are fiddling around with your fretboard, not to get any glue in the slots, because as you can see, it is a pain to clear out. Anyway, I think I'm getting there, so I'll come back to you in a bit once I've done it. So I've gone through all of these slots with this tool, and I've also done a little bit more sanding on this neck because it wasn't quite right. What I'm going to do before I go any further is just put some finishing oil on the fretboard, let that dry in a bit, because it'll just give a bit of protection to the fretboard. He says if you can get the thing open, that'd be really good. So just going to rub some of this in lightly over the top. Bring out the colour, won't it? Look at that, lovely, beautiful. So just a thin coat, just to add a bit of protection there. Right, magic. I'll let that just soak in a bit, and then I'll wipe it off. Okay, well, I'll let that soak in, and I think I'll go and have a cup of tea. Okay, so I've let that soaked in and dry off, so that's all right. So we've got a little bit of protection on there. Now then, this isn't really necessary, but I like to clamp the neck in position while I'm doing the fretting, and this is a homemade clamp that I've got, very simple to put together, and I've got a video which talks about how I made this, and I'll put a link in the description below. In fact, all the tools that I'm showing, they're probably covered in little videos that I've made, so you can have a look at that. Anyway, that just keeps it nice and rigid, which sort of helps. So what do we do now? Well, I think it's time to introduce you to a couple more of my homemade tools. So now the first one, you will notice that this neck has got binding on it. So if I put the fret there, what I don't want is the tang cutting into the binding on the edge there. So I need to remove the tang underneath this fret. And to do that, I use this little fixture. Now basically it's a block of wood through which I've drilled a hole which is approximately the same diameter as the width of the fret here, and I've made a slot as close as I can to the centre of that hole. I've also cut out a middle piece here. So the idea is I push the fret through, and then using a file I can file that tang off. Now this again is not the only way of doing this, and you'll see professional builders use these sort of tang clippers. Now again, they are quite expensive, and I found that the filing method works really well, to be perfectly honest with you, and at absolutely no cost really. So the first thing I do is take the fret, lay it on the fretboard, and then just mark with a pen where I want to cut the tang. So there and there. Okay. Then I slide it into the fixture here, just like so, and I actually want to take it off just this side of the blue there. So I've got my file and just file that off. You don't want to go too far with the file. But in actual fact, because I've drilled a hole which is approximately the same diameter as the width of this fret, the fret actually sinks into the hole. So, you know, once you've gone level with the wood there, you've taken off the tang. So I'll just do the other side quickly. Yeah. And it's quite a quick process. Now, one thing you have to bear in mind when you're putting a fret like this in is that because it's got a curve on it, when I bang it down it's going to spread out. So you do need to allow a little bit extra on each end to allow for that to spread out, otherwise it's going to burst through into your binding. Now I've not allowed quite enough there, so I should pop off and file a bit more down. It's one of those things that as you go through each fret, you get used to how much you've got to take off. But just starting off, sometimes you need to go back and forth a bit. Right, that should do it. Okay, let's have a look. Yeah, now that's a much better fit. So that will just slot into there quite nicely. Okay, but before I do that, I need to introduce you to another tool. And that is my little brass fretting hammer. Now, I'll be perfectly honest with you, I pinched this idea off Crimson Guitars. I saw Ben Crow using one of these, and in fact they do sell these, so if you want a professionally made one, then pop along to Crimson Guitars. But I thought I'd have a go at making this, so I bought myself a section of brass rod, which is 50mm long and 22mm in diameter. And I cut it in half, or nearly in half. Then, if I can just unscrew this, whoops, I drilled a hole on both sides and threaded them. And I got myself a piece of a bolt there, sawed it a little piece off, and just pushed it through a hole in this little wooden handle that I made. You tighten that up, and hey presto, you've got a little hammer that does the job. Now, it's not one of those now what they call them, dead hammers, whatever, but it does the job for me. I actually made two. This one didn't go quite as well. It's a bit bent, but it's ideal for doing chiseling and that sort of stuff. Yeah, really easy to make, and well, you can spend as much time as you like on them, but they do the job. So we have the fret, we have the fretting hammer. One more thing to do before we put the fret in, and this is something you can actually do across the whole fretboard, and that is just to take a little triangle file and just to rub it very gently on the slot, just to sort of taper the ends of the slot a little. And the idea of this is it helps the fret slide in, and if you have to take the fret out, hopefully it'll minimize the amount of chipping that comes out. Once I've done that, I'm ready to put the fret in. Of course, having filed a bit, then there is a chance that you've got some more dust in the slot there, so that's why it's probably a good idea to go across the whole fretboard and just do that little filing first before you actually try and fit the fret. But just for demonstration purposes, I am now going to attempt to fit the fret. So make sure that the tang is in place and it's all nice and central. And now take the fretting hammer. This is the fiddly bit, to try and make sure that it's in place. There we go. Oops. Now I'm going to give it a quick thump in the middle. There we are. And then work out to the edges. Now when you're banging, be really careful that you go straight on, because you don't want marks on the fretboard. And believe you me, I nearly always get marks on the fretboard, so it is a bit of a fiddle. Make sure that's nice and seated. I think that looks pretty good actually, that one. Okay, now I can take my modified pliers and just snip the ends off. And I like to do this as I go, so I haven't got anything hanging off. So that's fret 1 done. Now then, it's just a question of working through the rest of the neck with all those other frets. But before I do that, I'm just going to go through with this file and do all that little chamfering on the edge. So I will come back to you in a bit. One thing you've probably noticed with me is that I don't glue the frets in. It's something I've not really done at all, except if the fret slot has got too big, because I feel that once these strings are on, the pressure on that wood there will hold those frets in. I mean, they're in really tight anyway, and it just seems to me to be another problem to overcome if you've ever got to change the frets. So that's my own personal view. I know lots of other people use glue. I think Ben Crow has swapped from using super glue to wood glue, but yeah, it's entirely up to you. Anyway, I shall get on with the rest of these. Okay, I'm back again because I've made an error and I want to show you what I've done. And basically this fret here has got a dip in it where I've accidentally bashed it too hard with the hammer at an angle. So I'm not happy with it, so I'm going to take it out. And to do that, I've got these little wire snippers, these sort of electronic wire snippers, which yeah, really useful, not too expensive to buy, really handy to remove frets. So what I'm going to do is just very gently ease it up, and I hope that I'm not going to have too much tear out. So it's just a question of doing it really slowly, working it out, trying to grip it in. It's coming up from that end. There we go. Just ease that out. Take your time and it'll come out. There we go. There we go. There we are. Right. I just need to tidy that up a little bit. Just do it with a file. Okay, so now I'm ready to do another fret. As I said, I always expect a few frets get messed up along the way, but it's not a problem. And when you've ordered 5 meters of the stuff, you've got plenty of spare. Okay, so I've got my replacement fret there, which has been cut to size. So place that in the slot and very carefully bang it in. And that's gone in much better now. It's much better to do it now rather than trying to fix the problem when you come to level the frets, because a dip like that would cause lots of problems. Right, well, I've put all the frets onto the fretboard, and so the next stage will be to level these frets and to dress them, but I'm not going to do that in this video. I hope it's been of some use to you. Please let me know in the comments any tips you have for fretting. For those people who are experienced at fretting, I apologise if this has been trying to teach you to suck eggs, but I hope all the beginners amongst you have got some confidence to try and do this for yourselves. because I have to say it's one of those most satisfying parts of guitar building, and especially once you polish those frets up, well, they're absolutely fantastic. So, well, thank you very much for watching. Please don't forget to hit subscribe, and please don't forget to comment. I always answer the comments. I will look forward to seeing you soon. In the meantime, stay safe. Cheers.